All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Lasting Learning Podcast. So glad you decided to tune in because this week we have an amazing guest. We got a guest truly joining me from the other side of the world. I mean, that just completely baffles me. I was joking before we went live and started recording this that I just typed into Google Maps the distance between us. So I was just curious, and Google Maps said can't find a way there. But we found a way to make this happen. I've got a guy on today who's going to wow us with some history, going to wow us with some futurist thinking. He's going to be tapping into a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a long time, both as a dad and as an educator and a podcaster. He is amazing. He's brilliant. He's a writer. He's a professor. He's a researcher. He does it all. He's truly a genius. He has a book out right now titled Demystifying Esports, a personal guide to the history and future of competitive gaming. I mean, right there, that gets me fired up. Esports. I can't tell you how many arguments I've had with people about esports. So let's open up the door and invite Baro Hyun in to share with us from Tokyo, Japan, what is going on in his world. Baro, thanks so much for being here, man.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. Glad to be here. And as you said, I'm from Tokyo, and it's 8 a.m. in the morning right now.
Well, I appreciate you getting up bright and early for this. For me, it's not quite so early, so I've been prepping all day to have this conversation, man. I'm excited.
Likewise.
So other than being a guy hanging out in Tokyo, Japan, can you just give people some of your background? We were talking a little bit beforehand, and you've been really all over the place, so including literally my back door, my backyard. So fill people in. Who are you and what you about?
Yeah, so great to meet you all. I'm Baro. So I'm originally from Korea, but I grew up in the States, and the last place I lived was actually in Michigan, where Dave is based. And where do I start? So I was born in Korea, raised in Pittsburgh, and then I went back to Korea while I was in elementary school, and then basically grew up there. I finished until college, and from grad school, I'm back to the States. I got my master's degree in New York and PhD in Michigan, and did a postdoc, and then went back to Korea to work for an automotive company, and came to Japan 4 years ago. And now I'm working at a Big Four consulting firm, and I joined as a tech consultant, but now I'm doing this thing called esports advisory, and that's pretty much in a nutshell.
Well, we're going to break down that nutshell a little bit because I got to tell you, it's fascinating when you say you're from Korea and then you grew up in Pittsburgh. Like that, those are two very different worlds. So how does one find themselves moving from Korea, literally 13,000 miles away, to Pittsburgh to grow up, and then finding their way back to Korea?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of family history there. So my parents back then were both poor grad students in the States, and I was born, and they decided to have me born in Korea. So I was born there, and then right after I was born, after 4 months later, they brought me back to the States, and that's where I basically grew up for 7 years or so. Yeah, so went to kindergarten and elementary school there. And then after my dad's finished his degree, he got his job in Korea. So that's when we got back, and I started attending elementary school. But we did a little bit back and forth here and there. And and then, me as a kid growing up, seeing my dad, being a very, he was in academia. So I had this, fascination about, being a grad school in the States at the same time. So I thought, I took the same route as well, I guess. So after I finished my college degree, I just decided to move back to the States and get my, graduate degree in the States. And that's how it really went.
So I got to ask, man, you found your way to the great state of Michigan and decided to leave? What? How did anybody leave Michigan?
I know, right? Yeah, I know. Yeah, trust me, Dave. I really enjoyed it, and oh boy, like all the time that I had, and I got my first child in Michigan actually, and we had a lot of trips around the Upper Peninsula and all that.
Yeah.
I like, if you see my places where I live all these cold places, especially in Michigan. Was pretty cold too. But I love it, by the way. Yeah, but yeah, I really missed it, and I really still miss it. I still haven't had a chance to go back. Not like only Detroit, but not Ann Arbor yet, which is really a shame. But I hope I can go back pretty soon.
And now you find yourself in Tokyo, the
Yeah.
heartbeat of Japan. I mean,
Hmm.
Tokyo is one of the most gorgeous cities I've ever been to in my life. Clean as can be. The people are just so polite, but it is bustling. It's bustling. People are moving. They are shaking. There is business being done. So you kind of told us your title behind what you do. Can you break that down a little bit? Because I know that that's part of the intrigue as to what brought you away from Michigan to Tokyo was to do what you're doing right now. It's super fascinating.
Right. So to give you a little bit of background, so as I said, I was trained as an engineer, and I accepted this job in South Korea. It was an automotive company, Hyundai, and I was working there as an R&D engineer for 4 years. And I'll be honest with you, while I was working as an R&D engineer, which was really a lot of fun, but I realized that maybe I don't want to die as an engineer. You know that feeling, like,
Yeah.
you've been trained all years and you have that experience, but then you realize, is this really what I want? And for during that 4 years, I've been thinking about it. What is it really that I want? So I came to a conclusion that maybe R&D engineer, I mean, was maybe too refined in a way that everything is given to you, like you're supposed to make something, or like the problem is already given. But I wanted to do maybe something more close to business. I wanted to have more clients, because in the R&D world there's no such thing called client. So I wanted to face more clients. That was one. So I wanted to do more business. And another one was about, I wanted to make use of my more communication skills. So because in the R&D world, is really, basically you're doing internal work. So after that realization, I had a chance to move to Japan because my wife, she's from Japan. And then I accepted this new opportunity at this management consulting firm. And, that's how I started. And it's been a huge roller coaster ride. It's probably one of the best decisions I made in my lifetime career, and it's been so much fun since the first day. And I joined as a tech consultant, obviously with my background. But then maybe I'll get into this later more into detail. But then I decided to start a esports advisory, and it kind of started as a side project back then, but now it's a full-time commitment, and I have a team that I lead right now.
And I think that's so many people's dream is to take your side hustle, your side project, and make it the thing that you do. If for those people that are watching this on YouTube, they can kind of see your setup. You've got the chair that I think a lot of us dream to be able to sit in. You got the mic, the headset. But your job isn't just sitting around playing video games. When people hear esports, they think, okay, this guy's a gamer. He's just sitting around playing video games all day. Now, is that what you do, or is there more to it than that?
It's actually, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So there's actually more to it, and I don't, honestly, I don't play much game at all.
Yeah.
And I used to be a lot of, I mean, play a lot of game back when I was young, like everybody else. But my job is really for my clients to to enter this new market called esports or gaming, and because there's so much opportunity. And just to back up a little bit with what I said about how it really started. So like growing up as in Korea, like where esports everything started, but also at the same time I was a big fan of Japanese games. Like coming to Japan, I had a lot of expectation that it's a gaming nation. Everybody knows it's this game. I mean, it's a nation for Nintendo and Sony and all that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I had a little more expectation about this thing called esports, because it's already big in Korea when I was growing up. But to my surprise, it wasn't big at all when I just came here. So I found it kind of peculiar. So, and then maybe we thought there's a business potential behind it, so that's how it got started as a advisory service in this consulting firm. And it really started as a side project. So the beginning was really about teaching and about the marketing activities and stuff, because not many people know what esport is,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of different places around the world. So I had to actually let them know what this is, actual industry going on, and there's a huge history behind it. But then it started really took off in 2018, and now it's a good business for us now. And for my clients, I basically, our message to the to our clients and the market is that you don't have to create games in order to enter this market. Because before, in the traditional gaming market, it was really all about company creating games like Nintendo, and it was very player centric. Like it was targeting for the game players. But nowadays, since it became esports, it's not only about playing; it's also about watching. Like you watch Netflix or History
Mm-hmm.
Channel whatsoever. So it's that viewing experience that's really entertaining, so that you don't really have to play. So there's I call it as a passive form of engagement. So there's just so many different ways of engaging it, and thus for companies to have so many different opportunities business wise.
So Baro, I'm going to change hats a little bit because I'm a father
Yep.
of 4 kids. Okay. My oldest is a high schooler, is a freshman in high
Nice.
school right now, ninth
I
grade.
see.
My youngest is in kindergarten. So I swear every time the TV is on, they're watching YouTube, they're watching people play games, or they've got their Xbox hooked up and they're actually engaged in the games. And it's for a 43-year-old man to watch this. There are times I look back and I say, I don't get this, guys. I don't understand what you get. What's the enjoyment you get out of watching other people play games? But they always push back at me and say, well, Dad, you watch basketball, you watch football, you watch baseball. And that's the argument that they give me. I don't play the games, but I'll sit back and I'll cheer and I'll watch. Is that what you're describing here when you say you can just create the platforms for the viewing experience? You don't necessarily have to create the game?
Exactly. I mean, your
Okay.
children nailed it like perfectly. It's really that. I mean, that's probably the best analogy that I can think of. Like just watching professional sports, right? Like I don't play professional basketball at all, but I don't play soccer, but I watch playing. I'm just
Sure.
watching professional soccer and basketball, for example. So it's pretty much the same experience. And I think part of the reason why like people with minimal gaming experience don't relate to that is because I mean, they just don't have the experience of playing games. Maybe not as much as the younger generation nowadays, and also at the same time, they're not really familiar with the rules of
Mm.
how that game works. Right? There are just so many different genres of game, titles of game, and depending on the genre, there's different rules and different scenarios. So if you're not used to it, it's really hard to relate to them. And depending on the game genre, some genre is really easy to relate, like sports games, like you have FIFA
Mm-hmm.
or Madden or something like that. You already know the rules, but like games like I don't know, like League of Legends, which is something completely brand new, you have to learn and dig in a little bit to actually understand what's going on, and that hurdle can be a little intimidating if you're not familiar with it.
That's fascinating. Totally fascinating. So you're unpacking this for me, and you're making a good case right now for my kids when they push back on me a little bit, because I constantly push back and say, you need to play the game. I don't want you to just be a passive consumer. And they have
Mhm.
actually told me, no, Dad, you don't understand. I'm learning. And I roll my eyes and say, you're not learning, you're watching. But what you just argued, you're spot on to something here, because I'll use the sports example. I maxed out on my potential in high school in
Mhm.
basketball, for example. But I can turn on and I can watch LeBron and I can watch the Lakers, and I can learn some intricacies that if I were to go out and play a pickup game, I might be able to apply. And am I going to be out there and dunking and making some of the turnaround jump shots he makes? No, but I am learning some subtleties of the game by watching, and I'm in awe, and it gives me a new appreciation. So I don't know that you consider yourself necessarily an advocate, or maybe you do for e-gaming. But do my kids have a point that allowing them to watch gamers on YouTube is actually a learning experience, not just pure entertainment?
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%, 120%. So it's really the learning experience. Like all this, so a lot of these games now are very strategic. So these like professional esports player are extremely smart actually. So by watching it, you're actually learning their strategy. That's one. But also not only on the strategic level, like the tactical level, like what's going on, and also the controls and all that. Like it takes a lot of skills, takes a lot of training to actually reach that level, and people call them professional. That's the reason why that people call them professional. So you're actually learning by watching it, and that nowadays, especially with esports players, what's a little different from say a traditional sports player is that a lot of these esports athletes have their own personal YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
and they broadcast their own training session, so that you can actually learn more what's going on, what's the mindset behind these players while they're practicing. And what's more to that is that even in the actual official like the league tournament broadcasting, they're always set up like a caster and commentator who's constantly commenting of what's going on, just like traditional sports scene, so that even if you're not like professional level, they make it easier for you to understand what's going on, what are the skill set, what are the strategy, the mindset that they're going through. And so that whole experience is not only about just watching and for entertainment, but if you're actually a player, you're actually learning something, and that's how you actually skill up yourself.
I feel like these gamers, they are so much more than video gamers. They are marketing geniuses, because
Oh, yeah.
truly what they're doing when they're out there live streaming, or they're broadcasting on Twitch or YouTube or whatever platform is about to emerge, they are giving away their secrets to how to play the game. They're not out there really trying to conquer the world and to be the best. They just want to create their own brand, similar to professional athletes that are out there trying to brand themselves. So talk to me, advocate for me, and explain to me where this is going. Is e-gaming taking over the gaming world? Are esports going to be more popular than traditional? I'll use athletic sports. I don't know what the proper term is, but the sports that require you to sweat and work out and exercise. Do you see that those two worlds competing, or one overtaking the other, or are they symbiotic?
I think they're symbiotic, and sorry about that. So, like, I think traditionally we had two mutually exclusive markets. So we had the traditional sports crowd who likes to sweat and work out, whereas we had the video gamers, a little geeky, but who doesn't like to move maybe,
Yeah.
but spend too much hours in the chair, etc. Those are mutually exclusive, I would say, back when I was growing. But nowadays they are not. They're inclusive, and you can easily see nowadays that your kid, like my kid, I mean, they're like avid Fortnite players, but they also like to have fun outside and play some balls, basketball together with their friends. So this is not something mutually exclusive. And what I can tell is that nowadays, as you can, I mean, Dave, with your four children, is like, it's not really about. I mean, they probably no longer watch much of television, or like it's not only,
Right.
but this television is minor nowadays. It's really about YouTube and even gaming. So these younger generation experience is based on this virtual experience within the game, and that's where they spend most of their time. So as the demographic goes towards more older generation, I think they're going to take the majority. And if you think of that, then I would doubt that the traditional sports scene will diminish, but I would say that these two will symbiotically coexist together.
Well, it's so much to go on from that, because as an old guy, which people tell me 43, that's old. That's not old. That's young.
It's not old. What are you talking about? Yeah.
But when we're talking in terms of gaming and gamers, I mean, I'm the Super Mario, Legends of Zelda generation, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong generation.
Oh yeah.
The games that my kids are playing right now, the online platforms and multiplayer, it's mind blowing to me. Not only what technology can do, but what individual players can do. And I feel at times as though gaming today has become an addiction that I don't remember it being when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I feel like my mom could come in and say, Dave, time to turn off the Nintendo. And I would turn off Contra, and I would know that when I came back in, I could up, down, left, right, be able to start, get my 30 lives back and jump back into a new game and just go.
Right.
Nowadays, it's turn off the game, and I'm in a tournament. I've got another 8 hours to go, or someone else is about to stream it. And it's like it never shuts off.
Yeah.
Is that normal, or are my kids just this? Are they scamming this old man Dave?
Dave, that's totally normal, man. I mean,
Okay.
I go through that as well, and that was a reason why I wrote this book, right? So, I mean, before I answer that question, give you a little bit of background of the mindset, like writing that book. So, my mother-in-law, who takes care of my kids on a daily basis, she thinks that gaming is evil, because I mean, they play Fortnite all day, and especially my younger one who's 6, he's in kindergarten, like he doesn't have any duty or whatsoever, homework whatsoever. So he just plays as long as he wants. And just one day she snapped and his charging cable of his Nintendo Switch with the pair of scissors. So it was clearly there was a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
stress built up. So I thought we got to do something about it. So back to your question, Dave. So that's completely normal. And the reason I think one of the reason why for that is because I mean when we were growing up, I was also a Mario and Zelda generation, which I love
Yeah.
it by the way. And what's different is really it's a communication with another peer. So you're actually just like you're having a ball game with your friends. You're playing the games with your friends, being online. And nowadays you can actually voice chat, like we're doing right now, so that you can have that more engaging experience with your friends. So as a parent, I do that too. But like let's turn off your switch. That means that stop playing with your friend. Nowadays.
Hmm.
So it's hard to just quit. Just like
Oh, for sure though. But you just a light bulb just went off for me
yeah,
because
yeah.
as I said, when my mom would tell me to turn off the Nintendo, that was an easy thing to say. But if I'd be out at the park, my mom would call for me and say, "Come on in," and I'm playing basketball or football or hanging out with my buddies. That
Mm,
was a much harder sell for my mom to get me to come in.
yeah.
I was interacting, and what you just described to me, I'm wondering from a guy who has literally been all around the world a couple of times, back and forth. You've bounced in and out of countries. We talk all the time in schools about the need to prepare our kids for this global world. Whereas
Yeah.
when I was growing up, it was prepare the kids to grow up and succeed in your community, maybe your state, maybe your
Mm-hmm.
country.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. My kids are communicating with people globally. Like I said, I type in Google Maps, how far away are we? And it said, there's no way to calculate. I don't know the route to take. But we
Mm.
figured out the route. We're just talking to
Yeah.
a computer. We're talking through technology, which is
Exactly.
what our kids are doing all the time. So
Exactly.
one could argue that they're actually setting themselves up for this global world like we were never prepared before.
No, I mean, you brought a really good point there because there's actually a business case right now here in Japan that there's a company who's using Fortnite to teach English conversation English. So,
Oh,
there are just so many English teaching, cram schools here, but, kids normally don't engage if it's like a classroom setup. But since it became a game, everybody plays already games, and they already have at least one or two friends outside of their country, and that's their first experience to speak a word of English.
mm-hmm.
That could be a swearing word. I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
but but I mean, that's really that experience, and that's really I think that's a positive experience because it brings them out there, and it lets them gives them they actually want to like reach out to these people outside because they're like player friends, companions. They might
Yeah.
play every day and on a daily basis together, but in order to really communicate, they have to speak English, for example. So that's one example that's actually going on. So there's just so much opportunities for it if you look into this angle.
So now let me play the other side of that because you brought up jokingly, and I laughed
Mm-hmm.
along with it and said, yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
their first words that they learn might be these swear words, which
Yeah.
I think there's a part of that from like the parent perspective that we say, but you're right.
Mm-hmm.
These rooms, these games, they're sort of unregulated, and you've got
Mm-hmm.
these 43-year-old guys hanging out and playing games with 6 and 7-year-olds and saying what they want to say, and even the gaming community has become big business and big
Mm-hmm.
money where literally at times there are millions of dollars on the line. And when you
Mm-hmm.
put that much money in front of people, corruption is sure to follow.
Oh yeah.
So how do we, I don't want to say the Pandora's box has been opened. It's going. We're not going to say gaming's not having, esports is going and it's growing. But how do we keep it within the curbs, within the streets
Yeah.
so that it doesn't just run amok?
No, I feel you. I feel, Dave, and thanks for bringing that up. Actually, this is the first time I'm actually talking about this at a podcast, but this is actually it relates to my main job. So my take on this is that it's exactly as you said. It's a relatively young industry. There's a lot of potential, but this industry is not close to perfect at all. So there's probably going to be a lot of holes. There's a lot of mistakes, and bad things can happen. For example, I grew up in Korea, and what I saw in Korea was that there was a boom of it, but at the same time, there was a bubble pop after a fixed game scandal, and a lot of people lost job in this space. So there clearly a potential of large risk. So so that's one of the reasons why I started this esports advisory at my firm. So my firm is known as a more known as accounting and auditing, corporate auditing, corporate governance, and compliance. That's their bread and butter. So I think it's very important for a firm like us to actually back up this industry so that we take care of all the risk components and try to install the appropriate governance and compliance behind it. And we're actually working locally here in Japan, where we're actually working with the government so that we have a social infra for that. So my point is that yes, it's a very young industry and it's largely focused on entertainment. But as grown-up adults, we know how business works, and probably our kids don't really understand and if it comes really into the business side. So I think there's a lot of room for us grown-ups to actually support this industry to be more sustainable and to be a little less risky in terms of governance and compliances. And I think like these events or like cheating or like that we were just talking about the swearing words and all that. There just so much things that we need to look after if we actually get inside of it. And I've been doing this for over 2.5 years now, but the more I get to know about it, there are just so much things that we need to think about it in terms of like safety netting in terms of governance and compliances.
Yeah, well, I love to know that there are people like you out there that are working hard on keeping things safe, legal, fair, the whole 9 yards. Do you consider yourself a historian of this new emerging field, or do you consider yourself an advocate? Which side of that do you fall on?
Oh, wow. I never thought about that, Dave. So I guess that's a really good question.
It's okay to be both. That's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to say both because like the historical side of it, I happen to be Korean. I happen to saw when this happened back in the 90s, and nobody called it esports back then. It was just people having fun with this new online game called StarCraft, based from the States, and it was such a big thing. And I realized that although this industry gets so big, I didn't see any like a source that gives a fair justice about what the history behind is. So that's why I decided to write this book. One of the reasons why I decided to write this book. So that's one thing that I think it's really important, that where we're coming from, knowing where we're coming from. But at the same time, what happened in Korea, I found it's like a small cycle of history. And as we know, as grown-ups, the history tend to repeat. And what I see happening right now and globally, I think it's a bigger scale of what happened in Korea. And some may be very similar, some may not. But so having that perspective, I think is really important so that we know where we're going and we can be ready for what's coming next. For example, like that fixed game scandal and all that. I think that's something that's very, very plausible at some point. And so what are we going to do as a business person or as a policymaker? What are we going to do about it? Are we just going to let that happen? So in that sense, I would say I'm more of an advocate of there's still a lot of things that we need to support in terms of like not only from a private sector side but also public sector infrastructure side as well, and also education.
Well, so let me talk about that a little bit. So I alluded to the fact that I've been to Tokyo before, and I went to Japan as an outsider, as an educator, to come in and help infuse new educational practices within the Japanese educational system.
Yeah.
There was this belief in Japan when I was there that Japan was rooted in tradition. The educational system was not necessarily emerging and not necessarily progressive. I put that out there because I thought it was interesting that at the time that I went, Japan was soliciting American educators to come in and poke the bear and push the needle a little bit.
Yeah.
Because some would argue that here in the States, our educational system is traditional. It's based off of an agrarian system that is somewhat antiquated and outdated. And I see lots of similarities. You said when you first came to Japan a few years ago, esports was almost non-existent. It wasn't a phenomenon. It wasn't something that was booming and growing. Here in the States, it's booming and growing, but it's almost like this underground thing where the old curmudgeons like me are trying to squash it and push it away. Some schools are beginning to embrace esports clubs. esports activities, but
Mm,
they are few and far between. Do
mhm.
you believe that it's our responsibility as educators, as the infrastructure to train the generation, to embrace esports, to try to train our kids in how to navigate this system? Or is it okay for it to be this offshoot that kind of just does its own thing? And as long as we're not screaming and yelling and saying no about it, that it's fine.
I think that's a great point. I think in my mind, I think it's more on the former side of the perspective. I
Okay.
think like as you've seen around the world, like also in Japan, like I mean, this esports or gaming thing, it's not an overnight phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
It's been there for over 2 decades, and it's keep on growing. It's gonna continue. And so the fundamental is there, and no matter what where we're going to stop or not, it's going to keep on going. We know for that for sure. Now, I mean, as a parent and also an educator, these kids actually want some guidance.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to, like, say, not so if it's on the hobby side of the world, like for casual playing, that's totally fine. You're just playing it for entertainment. But when it comes to, say, they want to do it in a professional level, that's the point when they seek help. And whether that being a profession in terms of a good player or
Mm-hmm.
being a business owner in this space, either way, these kids, what I've seen so far, I've been teaching in Japan for this is my third year teaching esports business for undergrad and grad level courses. uh, like the passion is there's so much passion is there, but they just don't know how. And I think that's the perfect situation for an educator like ourselves to actually jump in and try to guide them in the right direction. And it's really surprising to see because let me give you an example. Like the first grad level course that we gave out at KO here in 2018 was only designed for about 10 students. We were expecting no more than that, but actually 20 people showed up, and half of them were undergraduate kids. And we interviewed them, and they said they had to take this course because they never seen this kind of thing, and they don't need any credits. They just want to audit it.
Wow.
Cool. So, and we got a lot of media, exposure out of that as well, and it was fantastic. And the second year was a undergraduate level course, and we expanded it to a little bigger crowd. And it was designed for 70 people, but actually 180 people showed up. So, so I mean, these, like, students, if it's something that they like, that they have passion with, they will show up and they will commit. Which, I mean, I doubt that there's a lot of things that they my son will commit when they become a college student. But if it turns to gaming or sports business, if it's something that their interest, they will commit. And a lot of the time is that these students, they only know about, like, what game that they play and what they like about. But if you actually look into it, there's a huge industry behind it. And just giving that a little exposure of what's going on, to have that, to build that game, or to promote that game, or to promote that event, or to actually run and operate these teams, et cetera, et cetera. There's just so much, opportunities and business going on, and just having that exposure to them and just sparkle that, that inspiration. I think that's good enough, to for us to, give that guidance, I think.
So that's interesting. So these students that are showing up, you're right. They know how to play the games. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're not there to say, "Teach me the cheat codes." That's not what they're there for.
No.
They're there to say, "Take me as a brand to that next
Mm-hmm.
level. Help me
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to brand myself or how to infuse myself into the industry." So,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like a lot of what you teach, a lot of what you expose these students to, is more marketing than it is even technology?
Marketing and business, I would say. So with this thing, with this esports and gaming industry overall, what we so there's actually, like, to me, in my mind, there's largely three ways of companies to be involved with. So one is, as you said, marketing and branding. That's very obvious. But another one is, so there's new business opportunity in terms of, like, monetizing. So, for example, we have one of our client was a national power plant company that has nothing to do with gaming and esports, but because they've seen the growing, market within Japan, and they happen to provide the infrastructure that requires for gaming, for example, electricity
Mm-hmm.
and also internet. service. So they came talk to us about maybe they can do a new business based on their capabilities. So we did a strategy piece about having a new gaming facility business, like dedicated on gaming, which is very, very common in places like Korea and China. You have a like gaming
Gaming
like
cafe. Yeah.
yeah, gaming card basically, right? So I mean stuff like that. So you have definitely have a monetizing new business opportunity as well, but at the same time there's a lot of capital moving behind this in the industry. So a lot of venture capitalists take it as an investment opportunity. So and so there's also investment side of it as well. So if you like, a lot of students don't really get to understand before they take this course. It's really because most of the time it's only about gaming. But if you look into it, there's a marketing opportunity, but there's also a business opportunity, but there's also investment opportunity. And if you think of all the jobs and careers that you can think of behind it, I mean, downstream afterwards, they're just, they're just countless opportunities or paths that you can follow.
I'm extremely excited about what you're doing right now. You are filling me with hope for this generation, more specifically from my kids, because I've been so worried that my kids are going to grow up just living in a recliner, eating potato chips all day long, playing video games. But that's not necessarily what it's going to be. You got me thinking, man, my kids are going to be these business experts, these entrepreneurs out there just innovating and creating and collaborating and changing this world for the better through this medium that I'm ignorant about. So I need to educate myself. So do you think, just a simple, I'm going to throw a little promotion. I very rarely do this with people, but I'm going to talk about your book. If I were to sit down and just read your book, and thank you for sending me the preview copy so I could see it and read it. But for those people that are listening, if we just sat down and read your book, are we going to be prepared for this new world? Or are we just going to be more intrigued and have a lot more questions to ask?
I think it's going to be the latter. So what I try to do with the book is that, so when I first started writing the book, I like being a business consultant, I was really, writing a business book. But then after my, my mother-in-law having that, incident, I realized that maybe there's more to it. So there's a generational gap to it. So I made it I wrote it as more of a, educational book on the historical side, but kind of hinting upon a different, business aspects and about the market itself. So I'm guessing that if you're completely new in this, and after reading the book, you probably get a lot more questions, and not doubts, but I would say questions, positive questions about the future, where this is going, and probably more questions about what are the opportunities if you're actually a business owners, and also excuse me, about the career path about your kids, if they're really serious about gaming and the esports side of it. And I mean, like, as I said, my career, I've been training, as an engineer, but I completely kind of ditched my engineering side of my career because of this. Because to me, this industry, this whole thing in gaming and esports is a gold mine for me. There's just so much puzzle to be solved, and there's so much prospect. And, every day I feel like I'm just being simulated, like it's so many different aspects around the world. So that's why I've decided this route.
Oh, it's so cool. It's so incredible. Yeah, and you nailed it. As listening to and reading what you've written, it hits me both as a college professor, as a school-based administrator, as a parent, that there are so many conversations that I'm going to be engaging in with my own kids as a result of this. So many opportunities that I'm going to be speaking with my kids' schools about allowing and equipping them to have, not just to play the games. I know we argue all the time. Yeah, if you play the games, that you're learning cooperation and collaboration, which is great, but there's so much more to it that you have helped unpack and unfold for me that it literally has me excited about the future. I'm no longer dreading it. I'm not thinking Terminator, the machines are taking over the world anymore. I'm thinking this is now a new tool to help engage my kids like they never have been before, like I never was before. And that excites me. It really, really excites me. So I appreciate your work on this, man.
So glad to hear that, man. I'm just so glad to see you with that excitement, Dave. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
No, it is 100% genuine. And my kids, thank you. I guarantee it.
Yes.
Just in time for Christmas, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that was part of the reason. I'm sorry, that was part of the reason, right? So this is not only about, like for like generation who didn't grow with gaming, but also like my kids and your kids, right? Like that who have the passion. But a lot of the time, I imagine that they will face their parents, and they have to convince their parents that you're going to go to this route. So, and you then come to the situation where you're in a spot where you have to explain what's your plan and why is this important and all that. Let the book does the job for you, because it has all the history and all the prospect behind it. And, that's one of the reasons I also, what I was aiming for that.
Oh, that's awesome. So good. So good. So I got to throw this out there, and people that listen to this know that this is where we're going. I always ask towards the end of the podcast for my guests to give me what I call their mic drop moment, because you are a perfect example of a guest who just brought tremendous wisdom, value, and information. So much truth and so much knowledge was just laid upon us. And this is going to be one of those episodes that I go back and I listen to over and over and over again. And I'll probably play in the car with my kids there, so everybody can hear it and they can all say, "See, I told you, Dad." But if you had to lay it down and you had the whole world in front of you, microphone in hand, and you're about to walk off the stage, drop the mic, and leave their jaws just dropped because of the thing that you're going to say, what is it? Where are we? And I know there's a lot of pressure right there, but I'm trying to drag this out so you can really think of something big here, man. No, but what is the thing that you want people to take away from this conversation? What's the thing?
So, okay. So what like where I'm at right now. So I've been doing this esports for business for over 2 years, about 3 years now. And I'm reaching a point where I'm seeing the next step. And I think the next step is what I consider as a digital content business. So what I mean by that is that, let me give an example. So esports is actually a content based on another content, which is video gaming. So it's a content on a content. So we're gonna see this layer of different contents that is based upon original content like gaming that's keep on growing. So for example, we have a business example in China where they have a television drama based on esports. So right there, we have 3 layers of content: video game, esports, and a drama. And you see, the point is that these so-called digital content are reusable for secondary users, and you can create new values out of that. To me, as a business consultant, I think that's where the core gold mine is in terms of business perspective. That you can reuse this thing called IP, the digital content IP, and for secondary users in so many different forms. I think this is going to grow exponentially from now on, even more, as we already seen many examples and opportunities out there. But I think this is going to accelerate this so-called content IP business. So I want you to understand that, like, esports gaming, that's all good, but at the core of it, there's this content IP behind it, and that's where where our industry is going to spend a lot of time, a lot of capital on it. And that's why I'm getting into it. And I hope this kind of gives you a perspective of,
That's not a fair mic drop, because what you just walked off the stage and now we're all clapping, encore, encore, come on back, tell us more. So that's not fair. Now we're going to have to do another episode where you fill us in on all of that, because I feel like in the next 6 to 8 months, that's going to change. It's going to evolve, and you're going to have a new outlook, a new mindset that you're going to be able to share with us. If not a new book now that you're going to be writing about that. So
yeah,
you're going to have to come back on, man. That's all there is to it.
Absolutely. Dave, anytime. I would love to be back in this show. And, as you said, this is to me also as a recent breakthrough. And, I'm touching upon something really new, exciting stuff. And, even with my client works, we're getting into this and all this like IP world within the game, and then in reality, for example, if you have like say I don't know, the Tokyo Tower in the game, who owns what? If you run a business inside the game with the Tokyo Tower being a virtual Tokyo Tower, who owns what? Who owns the right, etc. This is all brand new, and this opens up a lot of doors for new business models. And we're at a point where the industry is starting to take a look at it, and we're trying to make it more clear about what's going to be the next step. And I happen to be at the forefront of this activity right now at my firm, and I'm just so excited to see what's going to come out next, and happy to share once once I have more to
Wow.
talk.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're listening to this, no worries. We were going to have Baro Hyun back again, and we are going to drill him on all this. We're going to give you the inside scoop of what's to come. He's going to look deep into that crystal ball and tell you what's happening, but not just because he's a futurist and a fortune teller, but because he is a student of history and knows the future was always driven by what's already come. And this has been an absolutely incredible conversation. I am so grateful that you were willing to join me from the other side of the world and truly from tomorrow. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'm going to have all your contact information and book information in the show notes. But for people like me who are too lazy to scroll down and click, can you just tell people where they can find more information on you, what you're doing, and the stuff that you're writing?
Absolutely. So best place. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So look me up just on LinkedIn. If you Google me on like my name, is probably going to see LinkedIn on top of my list. So just look me up there and just feel free to connect and say hi. Or if you just want me to send an email, demystifyingesports@gmail.com. That's where you can reach me directly. So feel free to do so.
Outstanding. And your book is up on Amazon, right?
Yeah, Amazon all over globally, so you can reach that. Or so, yeah, I think that's the main channel.
Yeah, it's available Kindle, paperback, hardback. You want it, you got it. So just go click and get it sent to your home today. Again, Carl, thank you so much for being here and for just being so real, so transparent, being willing to share your story, your truth, your research, your business, all the things. As a dad, as an educator, as a podcaster, as a guy who's just flat out intrigued by this, I'm grateful. And I know my listeners are too. So thank you for giving up so much of your time and waking up so early to have this conversation.
No, thank you so much, Dave. This has been a really wonderful conversation with you today. So very happy to be here and also be back sometime.
You got it.